Hello, I'm Rico Cavella, and this is your Fearless Aging. No, I'm sorry. I just did a podcast, the Fearless Aging podcast. This is not your Fearless Aging podcast. This is your ageless body self-care guide, your operations manual for your human body and for your mind. And the title of this session is Functional Nutrition, which is so important. We're going to really find out what the difference is between really functional nutrition and just basic nutrition. So our expert today is Josh Gitalis. He is a clinical nutritionist and a recognized expert in the fields of clinical detoxification and therapeutic supplementation. He runs a Toronto-based private practice with a worldwide client base. As a leader in his field, Josh teaches clinical nutrition for several natural health colleges and is the first Canadian nutritionist to become an Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. So Josh Gitalis, thanks so much for being here and welcome.
Pleasure. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, this is such an important topic. Nutrition is something that it's just, most people just don't really have a clue on really what to do about and what are the best things to eat. There's so much, it is true, there's so much information and misinformation about foods and diets and nutrition that most people are confused. So this is going to be one that's going to be really beneficial for people. So let's begin by just, how do you define functional nutrition?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. And I usually start by saying it's the opposite of dysfunctional nutrition. And dysfunctional nutrition is a system that's based on one size fits all. It's based on standardization. So for example, here in Canada, we have the Canada Food Guide. It recently got revamped and it's moving in the right direction. But for many years, there was a whole section devoted to dairy. Now, we have a multicultural society here, and we know that 70% of the world's population is lactose intolerant. So right there, our Canada Food Guide didn't apply to 70% of the people. They just couldn't be healthy if they followed it. So that's what I would call dysfunctional nutrition. Functional nutrition is about personalized nutrition. It's about figuring out what that person in front of you needs and providing it to them and the directions on what to do with it using food. It's not just food we're talking about. Therapeutic lifestyle interventions, therapeutic diets, and therapeutic supplementation. You know, the word diet comes from the Latin word diete, which is a way of life. So diet isn't just about what you eat, it's about how you live. And that's what functional nutrition encapsulates. And we've got a lot of great tools to be able to personalize those recommendations to the individual based on their main concern.
Yeah, that's so important for people to understand, that we're all biochemically unique, and what might be considered a really healthy food for one person can be actually real dangerous for another person. So this is so important. And it's true, same thing in America. We have the standard, RDA and all this things that just make a standard for everybody, but it obviously does not work because we don't have a really healthy population. So it's no question that we really need what you have to offer. So tell us about...
And just to elaborate on one of the things you said in terms of how one thing is one person's medicine, another thing another person's poison. It's like, here in Canada, we have the Inuit. In Russia, they have the Nenets, and they live in the Arctic Circle, right? Like way up north, and they have been for hundreds of years. And they thrive on a high fat, relatively high protein diet. They just don't have a lot of access to carbohydrates. You take that diet and you give it to the East Africans or the Maasai tribe, and they're just going to crumble. And if vice versa, if you give the Inuit diet to them and you give their diet to the Inuit, it's like a recipe for disaster. So obviously most of us don't have genetic predispositions to that extreme, but we're somewhere in between. And part of figuring out what the right diet for you is figuring out where you are on that spectrum.
And so geography plays a big part in it. And isn't it good that it's no question to eat the local foods as much as possible?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so tell us, how do you go about determining what foods and supplements are best for an individual?
Hmm. Well, as part of what I do in my clinic, we do a really comprehensive history and intake. My clients are filling out a fairly extensive form. It's about 22 pages. And then we're spending about 2 to 4 hours in person going through that form and figuring out the history and getting a timeline. Through that assessment, looking at their symptoms, getting a history, looking at their timeline, we could figure out what might have been missing over the years and what might have been in excess. In functional nutrition, we're always thinking about those two things. What are some unmet needs that maybe have persisted over a period of time? And what are something that might be in excess that they shouldn't be exposed to, right? And of course, the big ones come to mind there, like white oil, white flour, white salt, and white sugar. But more of what they need, that becomes more of an investigative process. And one of the greatest tools we have at our disposal is symptomatology. So, I always say that the body has a language called symptom. I'm speaking English right now and you understand that language and we're able to communicate, but the body speaks the language of symptom. And when there's a symptom, it's not something we need to just, suppress with a drug or surgery or, cutting it out or whatever. It's something we need to listen to and figure out what the body's trying to tell us, because it's not a normal state of being, right? So if someone presents to me with a low immunity, white spots on their nails, eczema, their cognition isn't quite there, a nutrient that comes to mind is zinc. And that helps to direct me through those symptoms as to what nutrient might be missing. In one of my courses, I have a slide where I show a plant and the different patterns you get on the leaf of the plant, depending on what nutrient that plant is missing in their soil. Farmers and gardeners know this. If the plant is suffering, look at the soil, look at what it's missing. Does it need water? Does it need certain minerals that might be missing? Does it need a more dense microbial environment? Does it need more sun, less sun, right? And the body is the same way. So I look at those clues to determine what that specific diet or nutrient might be appropriate for that individual.
So do you also use blood tests or?
Yes, definitely. So there's kind of a hierarchy, and we can then go to, if we want more objective information, because we can't get it all from symptomatology, we then go to medical, conventional lab tests. So I don't actually make those specific recommendations, but I will write a letter for my client to take to their doctor to get those done. And then above and beyond that, we have a wonderful world of functional lab tests, which look way beyond what a typical medical lab test looks at, and looks at the function of the body. So we can do, extensive nutrient testing as well that way if we really want to drill down and figure out what that individual needs.
So how would you determine what test a person needs, and then how can people get these tests?
Well, that's part of my comprehensive assessment. So no two protocols or set of recommendations I ever give have been the same. We don't have anything standardized because that's medicine's job, is standardization. We deal with individuals. And if they want some of these tests, again, there's sort of those two categories. There's the medical tests, and they would just go to their primary care physician. Mm-hmm. And then there's the functional lab tests. And surprisingly, a lot of them you can actually order online. So in one of my courses I'm teaching in a couple of weeks on supplements, we actually get all the students to test their vitamin D levels. Mm-hmm. And I know both in Canada and the US, there's companies, you can just Google search them, that offer kits that get shipped right to your front door. And you can take an active role and become your own practitioner in actually finding out some of these levels. I've even seen thyroid kits you can get, shipped to your front door. But above and beyond that, for functional lab testing, you really need to work with a qualified practitioner that works with some of these labs. And then you can get more extensive testing, and you also have that practitioner relationship so that they can interpret them for you and help you take the appropriate steps to bring those numbers back into balance.
Talk a little bit about really just how important good nutrition is to the body and to your overall health. I think a lot of people still don't realize, the importance of eating really whole, organic, live foods in their diet, and they just still think, well, it's just food, I'll eat it. So talk a little bit about really how important to getting the proper nutrition is for overall good health and vitality.
Well, firstly, I was born, I don't know, 7 pounds and a few ounces. I'm not quite sure the exact weight, but I think most people can tell that I'm not that weight anymore. I've built tissues, I've built bones, I've built a structure, I've grown. And that's the nature of the human cell. It's constantly replicating, it's constantly growing and multiplying. And it needs to do that from somewhere. It needs nutrients. It needs food to build that structure as one aspect of growth. If I want to build a barn, am I going to use old broken down wood or processed woods? No, I'm going to find the strongest, most natural wood to build that barn for longevity. So with that metaphor, you really truly are what you eat. We hear this over and over and over, but it really holds weight and is quite powerful when you actually think about that your cells are constantly turning over. Different cells in the body turn over at different speeds. Our skin cells are very fast to turn over. Our digestive cells turn over every 3 to 5 days. Our bone cells are turning over every 6 weeks. Most people know if you break your arm, you throw that cast on for 6 weeks, you take it off at the end because it's now restructured. Some of the nerve cells can take much longer, a year, even up to 7 years to really heal and replicate. But every 7 years, we fully are a new person. So you're never really more than 7 years old. And that's because our cells are constantly turning over. And we do that from the foods that we eat, from the air that we breathe, from the environment we're exposed to is constantly molding and shaping this organism we call the human body to be able to live on and live strong and have resilience to deal with environmental stressors. So, just as a simple concept, if you are eating depleted food that needed pesticides and herbicides and fungicides in order to survive in their environment because they were weak, well, you are what you eat. You're going to have poor resilience. You're going to need extra chemicals in order to keep you alive, like drugs, for example, pharmaceuticals. If you eat good, strong, nutrient-dense food, you're going to be good, strong, and dense, right? And even taking that a step further, some of the most powerful herbal medicines, and I know we're not getting into this in our discussion, but are plants that can live in the roughest environments, right? Like, I'm biking down the sidewalk, walking down the sidewalk, and there's a dandelion growing out of a crack, right? And in the middle of nowhere. And if you try to pull that thing out, the root is like inches deep. You can't actually pull it out properly. And dandelion is a powerful herb for detoxification. The leaf is amazing as a diuretic effect. You can even consume the flower. You consume every part of that thing, and it has powerful effects. It's been shown in the research. So that's kind of my take on nutrition, and we can discuss that in a lot more detail if you like.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I really like your barn analogy because I use the same one. If you're going to build, say, a shed or a barn, and you just use any old piece of wood you can find or use barbed wire to put it together. You use the cheapest anything you can find to put your shed or your barn together. And what's going to happen? It's not going to be a very aesthetically pleasing look. It's not going to function too well. And then the first big storm is just going to blow down. And that's exactly what happens to people's bodies when they just put any kind of depleted junk food into their body. Their body's not very aesthetically pleasing, which everybody wants to be, right? And it's not functioning too well, and then it breaks down. That's such a good analogy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So can people, when they contact you on your website, are you doing telemedicine? Can they actually get all these evaluation and work with you?
Oh yes, we've been doing that for years. So we work with people over Skype, over Zoom, on the telephone, and a little bit in person, depending on the nature of the world in that moment. But yes, I'm accessible all online, and I have a whole bunch of courses too on different topics that are 100% online as well.
Yeah, I want to remind our viewers that along with this, with your video training, you also get the audio, you get a transcript, and there's a PDF that comes along with this video, so all the contact information for Josh, and how you can get all his information he has on his website. He probably has some offers there and some free gifts that'll be really valuable for you as well. So you definitely want to check out the PDF. Well, tell us, for people who just, okay, so they're saying, okay, I realize I need to improve my nutrition, and so talk a little bit about what are the basic things that people should begin to do. What should they avoid, and what could they just do to start to get improving their overall nutrition?
Right. Well, there's a lot of ways to go about answering this question, but I'll try to jump to ways that are really user-friendly. So the first is to take out all the processed stuff. And those have lots of what I call the 4 white devils: white sugar, white oil, white salt, and white flour. Mm-hmm. And those have been highly, highly processed in order to have maximum shelf life and maximum addictability, right? In terms of how it tastes. So you eat more and get you buying more and more and more. So take all that stuff out. Now, an easy way you can eliminate that all and not even see it is stay on the outside of the grocery store. If you do go to a grocery store, if you're going to a farmer's market, you're doing good. But if you go to a grocery store, which most people do, stay on the outside of that grocery market, because that's where all the fresh food is. That is constantly having to be replaced and upgraded and moved, or else it's going to go bad, right? And really, that's the foods you want to eat. So take out the crap and what Michael Pollan calls frankenfoods. What also been shown in the research or labeled in the research as ultra processed foods, and bring in the good stuff. So you really can't go wrong if you're bringing in whole foods. Just eat lots of them and really focus on the fruits and vegetables. Lots of colors, because each color is going to represent a different family of nutrients for you. So nature has color-coded good nutrition for you. Mm-hmm. You don't even need a nutrition book. Just go out and look for the purples and the reds and the greens and the yellows and the tans. And then you're going to get a really wide array of nutrients. And those phytonutrients that give plants different colors have affinities for different tissues. So, for those of you listening right now, if I said to you, what color or what vegetable do you think is really good for the eyes? You might answer by saying carrots or an orange. And that's true. That vegetable has really high amounts of beta carotene. Beta carotene is the precursor to vitamin A. Vitamin A is critical for our vision. One of the most common causes of blindness worldwide is vitamin A deficiency. Mm-hmm. So each one of these foods is going to have an affinity and a specialization in different tissues of the body. So you want to get colors from the rainbow. I love using this one with kids too. Like, everyone loves color, right? So you get, with kids, you create a little salad bar. You got, a color from each category, and you say, fill your plate with the colors of the rainbow. Make sure you have each color on there. And they just soak this stuff up. So for those parents out there also who have trouble getting this stuff into their kids, start to make it fun. Get them active in it. And that's really sort of the key factors with having a really good diet.
Yeah, that's so important. I'd like to tell people, if you just make the biggest part of your diet just from real food, and real food is what's grown in nature, organic fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds and some healthy animal products, and real food doesn't come in a package or a box or a can or any kind of a package. It doesn't have a label. It doesn't need a label, right?
Exactly. One of the things my wife and I do on a regular basis, like, we actually did this a few years ago, and we already make a pretty tremendous effort trying to eat healthily. My wife's also a nutritionist, and we looked at our pantry. We opened up our pantry doors with all the kind of shelf stable stuff. Mm-hmm. And we said, out of all this, what can we actually make ourselves and never have to buy again? Like what can we take to the next level? And we're always trying to get to the next level. So, that's just a really important thing to understand for people, is that whatever place you're at, just try to do a little bit more. So we used to get prepared hummus, and we're like, we're never buying a prepared hummus again. First of all, it's prepared, so we don't have full control over the ingredients. And second of all, it always comes in a little plastic container. Mm-hmm. And then of course you can get chickpeas and make your own hummus. So we were doing that for a while. And then we're like, how can we save on using all these cans? And then now we're buying the raw chickpeas in bulk and soaking them and cooking them and making them ourselves. And it's not that much extra in terms of effort and time. And we save money and we save the environment. So it benefits everyone. And we're kind of just chipping away at that. We used to really like kale chips. So, we started at some point, actually this was much longer ago, we started just making our own kale chips. We have a dehydrator, we put a nice dressing on them, we throw them in, and they're a fantastic snack and just so healthy, right? Like you don't have to worry about eating too many of those. So I forget actually what the actual question was. I think I went off on a tangent, but those are just some ways you can kind of take it to the next level.
No, that's so important. And I like to always tell people, there's, as you mentioned, some of those things that you're making yourself, and there's no excuse, people say, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, there's no excuse for not knowing anything these days. You can Google anything. You can Google natural recipes for anything, right? So it just takes a little bit of effort and realizing how important it is to eat healthy, not only for your environment, but for the environment that we live in as well. So that's really such good points. We'll talk just a little bit more about supplementation now. Why we need supplementation and what kind of supplementation do you really recommend for people?
I think one of the most important ones right now is actually vitamin D if we're going to supplement anything. Unless we're getting outside at 1 o'clock every day in shorts and a t-shirt with most of our skin exposed when the sun's at its highest, closer to the equator, we're not getting enough vitamin D. Many years ago, I had a client who was a marathon runner who lived in California, and we tested her vitamin D because we test every single person's vitamin D, and it was below the normal range. It was in the bucket. So that's not necessarily a good indicator of where your vitamin D levels are at. So I'd recommend everyone get their vitamin D levels tested, but also supplement vitamin D to the level that you need. Most people need between about 2,000 and 10,000 IUs per day of vitamin D. Most people are good around the 4,000 to 5,000 IUs, and blood levels are not going to fluctuate massively at that dosage. So you just want to test it at your earliest convenience. Every 3 to 6 months is a good rule of thumb. But yeah, that would be one of the most pressing vitamins. It modulates the whole immune system. It activates antimicrobial chemicals in the body. So if you are infected by a bacteria or virus, if you don't have proper vitamin D levels, you can't mount the appropriate response against that. It's just impossible. Has this been shown to affect our society and the numbers of complications and deaths and whatnot? Absolutely. So there have been multiple studies now looking at blood vitamin D levels and your risk of suffering complications or even death from COVID-19. And those with the highest blood levels of vitamin D have the lowest levels of complications versus the ones with the lowest who have the highest rates of complications and death. So it's not just important for fighting viruses, it prevents many types of cancers, been well shown in the research to do that now. If you're in the lower level of vitamin D blood levels, like around 75 nanomoles, that's the Canadian unit, so some people might have to change it, have to do the conversion. If you're in the lower level, you have a 33% decreased risk of getting breast cancer, but if you're all the way up in like 130, 140, you have an 83% decreased risk of getting breast cancer. So that's a massive spread. And a big portion of our population have no idea about that, that blood test that they need to be doing and treating.
When you also agree that unless you have your own organic farm and are making most all your own food, it's pretty difficult to get all the, I think we need something like 80 to 90 different nutrients and micronutrients to really function optimally every day. So when you agree that that's why it's so important that we need to supplement, and talk a little bit about the difference between whole food supplements and then some just chemical supplements that are made in the laboratory.
Right. So I think most people would benefit from a multivitamin just as a base for their regimen, a good high quality multivitamin. When we're supplementing, I actually shy away quite a bit from whole food supplements, because whole food supplements are not really getting to the therapeutic dosages, right? And they're made from whole foods. If you want to get your nutrients from whole foods, eat the whole foods. And then the idea around vitamins made in a lab, there's a little bit of a misconception around that, because some of them are actually quite similar to the ones we would make in our body or get from food. So for example, vitamin C, ascorbic acid, is created in a lab, but we lost the ability somewhere along the way to make it in our own body. Every animal on the planet makes it in their own body except humans, bats, guinea pigs, and I think most primates. But a little mouse, if it's getting chased by the cat, that mouse is going to pump out huge amounts of vitamin C, and that's because there's certain enzymes that help to make it. We lost the ability to have that enzyme in our body at some point. So when we make it in a lab, the lab provides that enzyme, right? And then it ends up in a supplement form, and then we can benefit from that effect. The whole supplement thing is a big can of worms, because then you can get into more bioavailable forms of the nutrient or the supplement that is closer to what your body likes versus more of a synthetic form. But as a general rule of thumb, you pay for what you get. So if you're getting your supplements from Costco or Target or big box stores or even the pharmacy, it's most likely very poor quality. And in addition, there's most likely excipients or additives to it that help to make it into a tablet or a certain color. Whereas if you're going to a health food store or looking on specifically targeted health websites that have higher quality vitamins, that's a much safer bet, and you'll be paying a little bit more, but you'll be getting a much higher quality version. And like another supplement I recommend for a lot of people is some sort of fish oil, and that's a big one. Like the stuff you get from Costco or cheaper versions are not processed properly to eliminate and get rid of all of the impurities like heavy metals and persistent organic pollutants and things, PCBs and things that can end up in that fish oil, because fish can be very toxic, versus the higher end companies that use processes like molecular distillation to remove all the impurities and give you a really good pure product that's going to improve your health.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Some people will always say, well, when we recommend people to eat organic foods and like I say, some of the best quality supplements, they say, well, it costs more. It's kind of expensive. And I have another doctor friend. He said, when people say that to him, he says, have you ever checked out the price of cancer lately? So it just, people got to realize that our human body is our most important asset that we have. And I would spend all my money to get the healthiest food and make sure I'm getting the fuel that my body needs before I would spend for anything else.
For sure. Most people are treating their car better than they're treating their own body.
I say that all the time.
If you were born, if you came out of the womb and someone said to you, we're going to give you one car that you can drive the rest of your life. You got to keep this one car until you die, maybe in 80, 90, 100 years. How are you going to treat that car, right? You're going to put in the best fuel. You're going to get the best tires for it. You're going to bring it in for regular maintenance. You're going to clean out the oil. You're going to look under the hood often. You're going to, and a lot of people treat their cars like that. Like they're going to have their car the rest of their life, but their bodies, they treat like garbage. They're putting crappy fuel into it. They're never cleaning it out, and then they wonder why it breaks down. And then you need, the pharmaceuticals and the medical interventions to hold it all together.
Yeah, I use that same analogy. Yeah, you only get one body, so why aren't you taking the very best possible care you possibly can? Yeah, that is so good. Just one more add on to that thing, on the car thing. I like to tell people, do you consider yourself a Ferrari or a Yugo? Remember Yugo? The old car came out. It was called the Yugo. It was a long time
I
ago, and
don't know.
it was only like about $2,000 or $3,000, and it fell apart in about 1 year, and it was off the market. So a lot of people just treat their, yeah, if you want to be a Ferrari, you better put the highest test fuel in it as you possibly can. So that was so good. So Josh, thank you so much. That was so interesting and so helpful. And so the last question I always like to ask all of my experts is, I always like to tell people knowledge without action is useless. So what ideas do you have to actually get people, everybody knows they should eat better, but what ideas do you have to actually get people to start to follow your recommendations and really take control of their nutrition?
Sure. Let's use a little bit about what we discussed today to make that list. So first of all, as a challenge to anyone listening right now, I would say on your next plate of food, make sure there's at least 5 different colors, and go through that exercise. And then do that again many times later. Second, go get your vitamin D level tested. Mm-hmm. Either ordering your own kit or going to your physician for them to request the test. And 3, go into your cupboards as soon as possible and get rid of anything that's processed, ultra processed, right? Just throw it out. Don't have any remorse about the money you spent on it, because it's just crap, and you are what you eat, and you are what you eat eats. So just get that stuff out of there and start a new slate. And, sometimes when I give talks with an audience, with people in the flesh and blood that are in front of me, I ask them, I say, put up your hand if you know at least one thing you can do to improve your health today. Everyone puts up their hand. We all know what to do. We all know at least one thing. So I encourage, again, anyone listening or watching to write that down right now and do it. This stuff is about doing it consistently on a regular basis over many years. There's not one supplement, one exercise, one diet, one thing that you're going to do that's going to turn everything around. It's about consistency over time.
So well said. Thank you so very much. And that's what this whole project is all about, is giving you the right information so you can begin to take better care of your body and your mind, so you can live a much healthier, energetic, and vital life and make a bigger difference in the world and avoid all these unnecessary pains and diseases that we are experiencing. So that's the message that both Josh and I want to give to you, that just you got to take control of your health, and you can do it, and just go out there and do it. Won't you agree?
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And you know what? There's tons of books and studies and journals and everything backing up everything we're talking about. But all you got to do is look at Rico. Rico's living evidence that this stuff works, and that if you do it for a while, it's going to pay off.
Josh Katalis, thank you so much. That was great. And
Pleasure.
So we'll just end with that. It's just, you got to go out and do it. If you want to be healthy and energetic and live a long life, you got to follow the recommendations that we offer to you. Thanks very much for being here.